the Evolution Security Podcast.
We're excited to be offering our 16-hour defensive pistol and combatives and weapons integration course in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the 19th and 20th of November, 2022. Defensive pistol is a course focusing on a fundamental defensive pistol platform from the holster, moving into dynamic shooting principles, along with a primer in close quarters firing solutions. You will leave this class having a solid concealed carry shooting platform and also, most importantly, how to practice. The Combatives and Weapons Integration class provides the client with a foundational understanding of self-protection techniques and tactics that can prepare you for dealing with and surviving a violent assault. This class has a foundation in wrestling and jiu-jitsu and is for any practitioner of any body type or age. Lastly, at the end of the day, there will be a light validation exercise, or in other words, a light force-on-force evolution with a blue gun or a training blade, providing confidence in the techniques learned. To sign up for this course or for more information, go to the Eventbrite link in the show notes or go to our website at evosec.org and look in current events.
Greetings, self-defenders. Thanks for joining us on the EvoSec podcast. It's always awesome to be able to do this show, especially with my twin bro, Erick Davis. How you doing, brother?
Doing awesome, man. Having a great day. Getting to hang out with you guys and see our friend Erick again.
Most certainly. Now, before we bring in our awesome guest, Erick, I just wanted to tell you guys a story real fast that was pretty dang funny. Let me start it out here by showing you something. Okay, audience probably can't see this, but you guys see this is a semi-fancy guitar soft case. I am, most of our audience probably knows that I'm actually an accountant. I'm what you call a guitar player that moonlights as an accountant. So for my entire accounting career, I've had a guitar with me almost every day because I play guitar so much and I practice at lunch. But I recently, actually just last week, moved from one building to another in my current company. And just the other day, I think it was Friday, I walk in with that guitar case on my back, and then not too long after that, some woman goes, "There he is right there."
Oh, I know where this is going.
And this I don't know if he was kind of like a go-to security bouncer because he was a big guy that was, designated to investigate things of concern. But he comes in there and he says, "Well, I'm so sorry to have to talk to you about this," because he had come down and sat at my desk and there's a painting of a guitar by my desk and all this stuff. And he goes, "Man, I was just coming to check because someone was concerned about that case that you have, that you could have something in it." So I open up my case and show him my guitar, and of course, I could have been offended by that if I was, kind of a normal, snowflake or something. But at the same time, I like it that someone was asking about that because they were concerned about a security issue.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. It's like I think most people like bristle and be offended, but you know what? She was being aware, and because a case like that could certainly carry a bad day for a lot of people. So no, good on her for at least asking. What's your thoughts on
and
that?
it was it was just a funny situation, and I'll be honest that of course there's a little bit of hey, inside me, but at the same time I think about it logically and go, I would like if there was another guy across the building that had something that's questionable. And I'll tell you, I don't want to have a bad day dealing with something like that. Hey, if it was for real, that's going to ruin your day. But yeah, it was just funny. But at the same time, yeah, a good deal that they did that. But just reminiscent, right? I guess the gangsters, Al Capone used to carry a Tommy gun in a violin case. At least that's the way the legend goes. So Erick Gelhaus, our good friend here from Gunsite, and just an all-around expert on pistols, carbines, and specifically shotguns. We're going to talk about shotguns this evening. But before we do that, Erick, what do you think about that situation, that story? What's that sound like to you?
Good that somebody was paying attention to what was going on in the workplace, right? Good that they've got some idea that there are concealed cases out there, or cases out there for folks to try to conceal long guns in. But it's also kind of should be an eye opener to folks who think that those cases that they might be moving around a rifle or a shotgun in aren't as discreet as some people think they are. So that may not be the thing to tote in the workplace, given the unfortunate paranoia that some folks have in the workplace and how that can have ramifications far beyond just getting caught carrying a gun to work.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good insight.
Yeah. Are you saying that it's just be aware of when you carry something like that it could be an issue or and the thing?
No, I was just going to say, just be aware that might flag you for it. Right. Folks have kind of tripped to the fact, like you brought up, the gangsters with the Tommy guns and the violin cases. Well, enough folks have seen some of these discreet cases that really aren't all that discreet anymore.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right? And it's just
I completely follow what you're saying.
If you, for whatever reason, you feel the need to do that, realize that you may not be as low profile as you think you are.
Oh, I'm following you 100%. Like if you were going to grab one of your cool, what are they, Black Hawk tennis case, cases for your pistol, AR pistol.
Yeah.
Which
they were cool for a little while, but I think everybody's started to pick up on that. And like you said, Erick, a lot of people are becoming privy to that. And yeah, it's only minimalist, as far as the low profile goes. It's, people that are kind of switched on, or especially people that just are a little, maybe they are paranoid. Maybe they are, just concerned about anything like that it's going to easily pick up a red flag for sure.
Well, and now those Black Hawk tennis racket cases, man, they're like the gun case. The fanny pack of the gun case.
There's a company I deal with, and I won't mention them or the specific product, but within the last year or so, they announced a low profile carry ring that's really fairly low profile and innocuous in the setting that you would use it in, right? But as at some point that's going to get known about and people are going to ping to it. So, and I won't go farther than that because I really like the idea and I don't want to see it get blown at this point.
Well, maybe off air, I would like to know, because I'm always interested in, because I'm full disclosure, for a little while I had one of those discreet bags, and then I started going, people are picking up on this. So, I'm interested in anything newer. So yeah, cool. Well, Erick, man,
Well,
it is awesome to have you back on the show for sure.
I'm honored to be back. I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me. It's pretty cool.
We want to have you on more. I don't know why it's taken us this long to have you back on. Aaron, what you got?
taking a cue from Lee Weems, right? He has a lot of you awesome guys on there often, and we've kind of built our niche, and we have some special guests here and there, but we just have a bunch of people that we really respect and learn a lot from, and we're just going to continue our bread and butter guests. And our audience really likes the guests that we bring on continually, actually. So
Let's talk about our sponsor, Origin. Pete Roberts was told you could not make jiu-jitsu gis in the U.S. Well, Pete and his team have proven the naysayers wrong by producing the best jiu-jitsu gis on the market. I, for one, love my Path gi. It is lightweight, yet strong and super comfortable with an innovative technical fiber weave that is also IBJJF legal. The Wave logo is legit. It has woven belts that blend between white, blue, purple, brown, and black, hence the name The Path. They also produce jeans, hoodies, handmade leather boots, and Jocko fuel supplements that help us recover from hard workouts, force on force classes, and simply make us feel better and more energized through the day. I just finished a hard workout in my garage gym and rewarded myself with a delicious mint chocolate milk protein shake and coconut milk. Man, it's like dessert. If you're looking for any Origin products, please go to our show notes and click on the affiliate link, or look for the icons in our blog section of our website at evosec.org. It helps us keep this podcast free and keeps the lights on. If you get something out of this show and you feel like helping us out, use EvoSec 10 for 10% off at checkout. Now, back to the interview.
Erick, so I had the idea to reach out to you and have a conversation about shotguns for home defense. Now, I'm sure we can cover it, not just home defense, but often I will say that my recommendation is that the best home defense weapon for the most people, okay, that qualifier for the most people is an AR-15. Now, I believe that, but at the same time, I will also add to that whenever I say it, quote, it can be, I'll quote myself, it can be arguable that a shotgun would be better, but I think that some people would have a harder time running a shotgun, especially a 12 gauge compared to an AR. So I wanted to bring you on and get some education from you about this topic, because I'm going to learn a lot. Our audience is going to learn a lot, because frankly, I don't hear much talk about shotguns at all on podcasts. So thanks for coming on here and giving us your expertise.
So I'll kind of start with I don't think I'm an expert. I think I'm a reasonably knowledgeable individual. I do teaching. Anyway, so just briefly my background: former military, retired career law enforcement. I came in when the era was revolvers and semi-autos were the handgun and norm, right? They were kind of about equal amount, and shotguns were the long gun in a patrol car. I got fortunate to take shotgun classes from a number of kind of the legends in the defensive shotgun world. After really getting introduced to them, not taught on them, but introduced to them as a baby cop. So that's kind of my background. I've been fortunate enough to do a fair amount of teaching on the shotgun at Gunsite over the last 20 years where I've been there. So that's the starting point for this. And we can run from there. Everything's influenced by the cop stuff, but the longer I've been retired, the more my thought process on this is transitioning to the decent, normal human being and how they're using it in like a reactive role. That make sense?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, makes me excited about this conversation, Eric.
Well, then I guess a way to jump right in, and then it can I think it'll lead to the benefits, how you teach it, what, some main topics that you need to run new students or slightly advanced students through. But so starting on that premise, comparing an AR platform to a shotgun platform for home defense, what are your just straight up honest thoughts about that between the two versus?
If you just look at shotgun versus AR, I can see the points in favor of an AR-15 in terms of ease of use, minimal recoil by comparison, right? Cost benefits on it. The problem is there are parts of the country where if you use an AR-15, regardless of what we and the Pro 2A community thinks about it, you may well have more of an uphill battle because of the perceptions about the rifle than anything else. That shouldn't weigh in. I'm not going to argue that it should, but it's something that one should kind of consider and factor into their stuff.
No, that is a reality, man. That's an excellent point.
Rittenhouse being a recent case for certain.
Then you start looking at ballistics. Can you get 1 and 2 shot stops with an AR? Absolutely. But more commonly it's going to be multiple shots to do it. And again, Rittenhouse would be an example, and that's not the only one I want to use. I can see plenty of law enforcement shootings that are now trending upward 3, 4, 5 rounds. And there are guys who are advocating 3, 4, 5 rounds as part of the discussion versus a shotgun with double-aught buck, where now you're pressing the trigger once and you're delivering 8 or 9 32, 33 caliber projectiles.
Yeah.
So now you're hitting the bad guy, the suspect, the threat, whatever terminology you want to use, with 8 or 9 projectiles, but you only shot him once. And if you have to shoot him twice, right, that's going to start, that's probably going to be the outer limit in most cases. You may have to do more, but it's 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shots, not 6, 8, 10. And if you look at how the media plays things, the court of public opinion, how some prosecuting attorneys can play it, right? That 1, 2, far into the spectrum, 3 shots from a shotgun plays a lot better than 6, 8, 10 out of a rifle.
Nice.
Yeah. We've even got Joe Biden advocating for shotguns. So you have his endorsement.
That would not be an endorsement I would want to hang my hat on, but we'll leave it there. The shotgun is do a number of things. It's not necessarily great for any one thing, but it works across a broad spectrum. If you're willing to take the time to learn how to use it in different venues in different zones, you can do an awful lot with it. Unfortunately, so let me back up. I was fortunate I came into law enforcement when I did, but I started the academy with a revolver. That was a firearm that I had to physically put the projectiles in, and then I supplied the energy that mechanically operated the firearm and fired the next shot with a revolver. Right, double action trigger not only cocks it, but it moves the cylinder. Now, looking at a shotgun, I have to physically load each shell, and then on a pump gun, I operate the weapon much like I do pressing the trigger on a revolver, which pulls the cylinder. Right, pumping the action, brings the round back onto the carrier, lifts it up, I push it forward. Right, I chamber the round, then I fire it. Those things work together. We're now in an era with most folks in firearms where we put a box loaded with projectiles into a magazine well. We pull something on the top of the firearm, be it a slide or a bolt, to the rear. We let it go forward, and then as long as I press the trigger, it fires and cycles and picks up the next round. I'm not having to manually do all those things. So that's where I understand that a rifle, semi-auto rifle like an AR-15 and a semi-auto pistol have a lot in common, and they make it easier for the end user. For a long time, we didn't have reliable semi-auto defensive shotguns. With the Beretta 1301 especially, we've now got a very reliable, feeds almost everything under the sun, semi-auto defensive shotgun that, yes, you have to load the rounds manually, but once you start pressing the trigger, the gun cycles itself like our semi-auto pistols and our rifles do. And that may be where we're getting the crossover back into the defensive shotguns.
Very, very cool.
Interesting.
You know, Eric, it's as you sit here, you never, you always come with awesome knowledge. And as we sit here and talk, just bringing up the legal ramifications, you know, I mean, I'm going to be honest, that's not something that I thought about. And so that's
never occurred to me.
A brilliant thought. And as I'll just drive home this point. I can think about when I've read stories about the woman or the man that defends their home with the shotgun. It's almost like it's okay. Yeah, that's cut and dry, easy, innocuous. They use they grab their shotgun. Compared to that's a very good point, and it's cool when. You know, we have epiphany moments like this that it's like, that is a very valid point about the legalities and how it's perceived by the public. So, yeah, that's great, Eric.
Well, that's one con to put into the column of shotgun.
You mean pro? Is that what you meant?
Pardon me. It's the IPA, I think. And I'm thinking about that now, Eric. And aside, don't you live in San Francisco?
No, I do not. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I live at the very north end of the San Francisco Bay Area. I do not live in San Francisco, and I avoid driving through there kind of like the plague. But
well, I think you're covering up something that you sneak in there to San Francisco and vote for Nancy Pelosi.
Bro. You know, I treated your brother so nice in the class where I met him, and you're going to do me like that? Hey, Eric, did I not look at you and go, I recognize the voice? I didn't know the name, but I recognized your voice in that class. That was the first thing I said to you.
Yeah, it was cool because, you definitely did. And actually, I think that started a cool thing between us, meaning it's like, man, and I think I mentioned to you because we're on that subject, like, I recognize you. I'm not sure where it was, and I recognize your voice. And then it took me a minute to remember back in the old days, back before I was even a soldier, some of the Gunsite videos.
I don't think I was in any of those. I really don't think I was in any of those, but
well, you were interviewed, I think, in one of them. And those things, actually, it's weird sometimes, the things that I think about. It's like, I think I remember, and maybe it wasn't on those videos. Maybe it was on some other Gunsite production that I definitely remembered you from that source. But yeah, you were real nice to me. And we had Tim Herron on not too long ago. And I said, what was it? Was it maybe 4 rotations we had in that class, or was it
4 or
3?
5?
I don't remember.
4 or 5.
But with you and Tim, it's like, man, and our audience has heard this, but I'll say it again because it's funny. It's like Eric and Tim didn't give me anything to coach. Therefore, that was part of the class, was learning how to coach better. So you and Tim, you guys robbed me of some of my learning in that class.
That's lame.
No, we had stuff that you picked up on, and you know, everybody was picking up on other things, right? And sometimes it's just a difference in perspective, different of opinions. Because I remember asking Tom about your grip.
Yes, and
the learning point for me was that while your grip was different from something I was used to seeing, it wasn't wrong. It was just different, and it worked for you. And that was the lesson I needed to learn from you coming through with me.
Yeah, and you know, although it did not affect me for most cases, what I started picking up on, Eric, and again, I think I might have mentioned this to you, that I started, and you know what it's like when you have thousands of repetitions with a grip, because let's face it, if we have developed our grip and our index and our draw stroke, we've done it thousands of times. And so for me to make the decision to change anything in my grip, man, that's a big decision and it's difficult, right? So, and I frankly am still dealing with that, but I made the election, especially like at 25, that I would notice sometimes that it would make a difference. Like if I was really choked up on my grip, that there could be times where it affected me at distance. So because of what you said in the class, I have changed that portion of my grip. And sometimes it comes back a little bit if I'm just really getting aggressive, but it has made a difference at distance, probably about 20% of the time.
Cool.
So yeah, again, it's amazing what we go through when we go to classes like that. It's just this evolving, the evolution of our path. It's just super cool.
So can I go back to being nice to Aaron now? Have we beaten him up enough? Okay.
Yeah, we did.
I was just gonna say, Eric, if I take a class from you, go easy on me because of the Nancy Pelosi jokes. It was all in good fun.
I know.
If I could just interject there, come back to this maybe afterwards, is because living in California, the AR isn't a good option for you, is it not? Or do you even want to talk on that?
I don't have a problem talking about it. My agency had a patrol rifle program starting in 1993. As a retired cop who still works part-time in law enforcement out there, there might be less of a stigma with it, right? Less media drama and stuff. But the reality of it is, do I need to chance it? If I know that I have a shotgun and I know that I can work it effectively within the realm of the most likely problems that I'm going to encounter, why not use something that I think is going to cause me less drama?
Yeah, that's a good point, buddy.
Again, I'm not, for your audience, I'm not saying ARs are bad. Don't take it that way. I'm just looking at the reality of the environment I'm in, and I'm looking at the capability of the weapon that I am very comfortable with from 30 plus years of using it.
Well, again, this is just an excellent perspective. And just so you know, the reason why we name this show the Evolution Security Podcast is that operative word, evolution, right? And this was let's be frank, this was a selfish attempt on my part to get a different perspective on this because of how many times I've repeated that I think you should get a AR because I think it's going to be an easier platform to run versus the shotgun. But I speak from that. I understand it. I understand the ballistic, especially the issue of properly chosen projectiles or loads with your AR-15s, counterintuitively being less of an over-penetration concern through walls. Now, we're not saying blast away at walls with any gun, thinking that you're not going to hurt somebody on the other side. But it's been proven that AR-15 loads have less of an over-penetration concern. So that also brings me to, if you disagree with that, let me know, for one thing. And then the other thing is, let's still just really couch this in what you think a home defender, why they should choose a shotgun instead of an AR, and when that would be appropriate, other than the stigma concerns.
So looking at the videos of home invasion robberies, looking at what's coming out in police reports, talking to guys that are still working the streets, you're looking at 2, 3, 4 suspects generally in these follow home robberies or these home invasion robberies. Stock Remington 870 is 4 rounds in the magazine tube. Mossberg 590s, you're looking at 5 rounds in the magazine tube, or you can do the dead space. Beretta 1301, it's 6 in the magazine tube, right? Or you can do 5 in the dead space. So now, if each shell's a serving size, and I'll use Tom Gibbons' line on that,
Yeah.
right? Now I can engage 2, 3, 4, 5 people fairly comfortably with a shotgun. If you look at the serving size for rifle ammunition, it's about the same thing as a 30-round magazine. Say a 30-round magazine loaded to 28 rounds.
Yeah.
Okay, if that 30-round magazine is legal in your jurisdiction where you live, right? I was just out in Colorado for a match, and magazine capacity was a big deal for that, and it was a really big deal with the USPSA Nationals. They moved them out of Colorado because of that.
That's right.
So California and Colorado are at least 2 states that have problems. I know New York has bigger issues, and there are states, regrettably, that have problems with it. We know that if you get the hit within the distances inside the home, it's going to be an effective hit. My home, the longest shot I have is 11 yards. Tape measured out is 11 yards. From one corner of my bedroom to the other is 5. From my bedroom door to the closest thing to the front door in my house is 6. Going from the front door to the farthest spot you can see in my house from the front door, it's 11 yards. Shotgun with that is going to hit as a single projectile on all of those shots with the ammunition that I use, delivering it effectively. Especially with a semi-automatic shotgun, a Beretta 1301, which is my preferred shotgun now. It once I start to press the trigger, that gun is going to run on its own until it runs out of ammunition. That's the good news. Bad news is I may have to reload it, so that's why ammunition's on the gun, right? Not separate, not on a sling, but it's physically on the shotgun itself. I grab the shotgun, I have the ammunition in it, I have the extra ammo to top the gun off if I need to.
We're honored to have Keepers Concealment as a sponsor of the show. If you have a modern appendix carry holster, it was probably influenced by their original keeper. So you owe it to yourself to check out what they have to offer for your EDC needs. Also, Spencer Keepers is a top-notch trainer. I've taken his AIWB skills class and highly recommend it. Go to keepersconcealment.com where you can buy a holster, sign up for one of his excellent classes, or inquire about hosting him in your town. For any Keepers Concealment products, use Evo Twins at checkout for 10% off. Also, Keepers Concealment is a proud affiliate of CCW Safe. They offer proven legal defense coverage if you had to defend yourself against a lethal threat. Go to keepersconcealment.com/CCW-safe to find coverage that meets your needs.
Let's talk about an awesome training opportunity. We are super pumped to be hosting John Murphy of FPF Training for his Street Encounters, Skills, and Tactics class the 5th and 6th of November 2022 just outside Fort Bragg, North Carolina. This class will teach life-saving material to include Stop the Bleed Medical, Pre-Encounter Management, Pre-Assault, Proper Pepper Spray Use and Deployment, Essential Shooting Skills, Scenario-Based Decision-Making, Post-Fight, and more. For tickets, go to our show notes and find the class link, or go to John's website, fpftraining.com, and look for the class in his course calendar. As I sit here and think through the conversation, so to give a little bit of background on my thought on the shotgun, I've owned a couple of shotguns, defensive shotguns over the years. I do not have one currently. But what you stated about not necessarily perception, but legalities has been a thought in my mind for quite some time. That's why I started toying around with the possibility of investing in some lever guns for my carbine in case in case, we go real tyrannical, that would be my carbine of choice at that point. But also the shotgun came to mind about the legalities if we do edge further down that road. And so the shotgun to me has been something that's been in my thoughts probably about the last year, about how, number one, I need to go ahead and invest in one. And I also need to take some classes.
Very definitely.
And yeah, and it's just exciting to me because I think Aaron would agree. We go through these cycles in what we do and what we add to our path, and I think shotgun is just something that's been on both of our minds. Again, hence the reason we asked you on. Plus, we like hanging out with you.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So, but with that being said, you kind of already hit on something, and when you mentioned the 1301, you probably noticed that I smiled because I've been looking at that shotgun, and frankly, I want to get to that in a second. But when we talk about shotgun loads, and I know this is very loaded. So if I can ask you,
but
yeah, pun intended. If we're talking about inside the home, and if you're outside the home, so if we can cover both.
So
your preferred defensive rounds for both inside the home and outside.
So defensive load in terms of dealing with two-legged critters, human beings. I would look at a double-aught buck load, preferably a reduced. Most people, especially running a pump gun, reduced recoil.
Like flight control?
Well, yeah, but we're gonna start talking with reduced.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm gonna start talking reduced recoil first, right? So something that makes it a little bit easier on the shoulder, something that doesn't beat the pellets so they're not deformed coming out of the barrel, which is going to give a truer pattern, a greater likelihood of putting all the pellets on what it is that you're trying to hit at the distances that you're trying to do it. I like the flight control offering from Federal. I like Hornaday's Versatite option a little bit more. It's slight variations in the shot cup. They're both bought on license from a company that was up in Utah, Billings Choke, for several years. That was the guy who created what is now known as the flight control and the Versatite Watt. The Hornaday is a little less tight, and there's a couple of us that tilt towards the Hornaday Versatite because it isn't quite as tight as the Federal flight control, and it does give us a little bit more spread. So inside a house, I would ask for a reduced recoil 8 pellet load, Hornaday Versatite, or the Federal flight control being the first choice. Outside of the house, if I'm not dealing with some sort of intermediate barrier, and I'm talking about within 25 yards, I would still look at the Hornaday Versatite or the Federal flight control. If I'm dealing with an intermediate barrier, a large 4-legged critter like a bear, or distance, then I would look at a slug. Reduced recoil slugs will probably be okay for most. At this point in my life, especially out of the Beretta, I can run full power Brennica slugs. I can run them out of a pump gun as well. And through technique, not have any drama with them in terms of how they work. And I know they will penetrate intermediate barriers. I know they will work on 4-legged animals if that's what I have to deal with. And I'm talking bear, elk, moose in that category. Mm-hmm. Like I said, and they'll work for me at distance once the gun's zeroed to them. So those would be my suggestions. Not a fan of birdshot for defense. It's as bad as I can rack the shotgun and make the bad people go away in terms of a myth.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, I hate that shit.
So I don't know if you guys know or not, my illegitimate identical twin brother, Daryl Bulkey, somebody thought we looked alike, and for years we did. Daryl tells the story of being in a shooting that he was in with the shotgun, and they interviewed both of the bad guys afterwards. Somebody else shot. I don't think Daryl shot with a shotgun, but the comment from both of the guys were, "Oh yeah, we heard the shotgun rack and we knew it was on." Not like, "Oh, it scared me." Not like, "Oh, I wanted to give up." They're just like, "We knew it was on." So
Yep, that is.
yeah.
I had never heard him say
yeah,
that. That's
we've had
awesome.
that conversation board a few times. I know he's talked about it. One thing I want to go back to, and I just hit on a couple of the myths of the racking and the birdshot, but you guys had mentioned earlier, get training.
Yep.
We're not in an environment where a lot of folks grew up hunting birds with shotguns. So they knew how to run the gun, they knew how to manipulate it, and they had actually tried to put food on the table with the thing. Go out and get good classes. Folks that I would recommend for it, aside from me, either teaching for my company or teaching for Gunsite. Scotty Reitz at ITTS down in the LA area, Clint Smith up in Oregon. Obviously, Gunsite with our shotgun program, Randy Kane down in the South, Rob Hott and Matt Hott travel all over the country. Daryl Bulkey with Hits, Steve Fisher with Sentinel Concepts, Tom Givens with Rangemaster. Those are all folks I have either spent enough time on the shotgun with, especially with a recent event that we did, or I know historically over the years they are all teaching good, solid shotgun programs. Randy Kane is woefully unknown. I think Randy should have a lot higher profile than he does, but I would include Randy in that as well, for sure. Randy Kane.
I have heard awesome things about Randy Kane and his shotgun classes. So that's and man, you just named off some incredible instructors that some of them we've trained with and thinking about working with them on the shotgun. But of course, we're always interested in working with you. Maybe that's again the start of working with you on shotgun. And I think that what you really kind of hit on beforehand, and I'm kind of digressing a split second, and I liked hearing it that way, is that there's no people think about, okay, what should I use in my home versus what I use outside with the shotgun. And you essentially answered that, hey, we're basically using the same rounds inside and outside and have slug capabilities. And here's the other aspect is that, and that was another thing that ding, ding, ding in my head is that the four-legged critters, like dangerous animals, the shotgun is a superb choice for that too. So again, it's like, man, this is why have I waited this long to try to dig into it? That's
you're digging into it.
thought.
So it's not that you waited this long, right? It's just this was a point where you wanted to look at it. And so now you're looking at it. I've got an acquaintance. His first name's George. He's extremely well off financially. More power to him. He spends a lot of time in places where there's dangerous four-legged critters. In his hand when he's out walking around in those places with his family is a semi-auto shotgun loaded with Brennica slugs. Because that's what's going to work on the critters in that area, far more so than even going with a large handgun. All right, he's got a shotgun that can reach out at distance, deliver a projectile that's going to have an effect on those four-legged critters if it comes to that.
So Eric, real quick, because I certainly that piqued my interest. When he's carrying that around, what size of shotgun?
He's carrying a full size. The shotgun, I don't want to speak for him, but the shotgun that he normally carries is one that nobody's really done the short barrel conversion to yet, and it's light enough for him to carry.
So we're talking 18, we're talking 20,
18-inch barrel.
18. Yep. Okay. Yeah, because that's what I've been considering is sticking with an 18 at least for right now.
I really liked the 14-inch gun I had at work when I retired, and that was the one thing I hated turning in when I retired. But an 18-inch 1301 is not, for me, problematic size-wise at all.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you've already, because I'd been looking at that shotgun for a while, and yeah, I think, Aaron, it's kind of one of those subjects you and I talk about all the time. I think the 1301's the buy once, cry once. I think that's going to be the purchase.
Well, then I think that is at least a telegraph of one of the things we're going to talk about here in a second. But I do want to go back and highlight, because anytime someone says, and I I just try and lay it out here and not ever claim I know something that I don't. So whenever someone would say double aught buck, that meant zero to me. I'll be flat honest. But saying that, so you're saying, I mean, double aught buck is kind of the standard, almost like you were going with the 124 or 147 grain quality 9mm. It sounds like.
Okay, so kind of there's a whole big spectrum, but the normal spectrum that we have is number 8 birdshot, maybe 7 for hunting birds, depending on where you're at in the country. You'll get down to number 4 buckshot, which is the smallest of the anti-personnel, anti-four-legged critter loads. Number 1 buck has had a pretty good reputation. Federal made a number 1 buck with flight control. Unfortunately, they no longer make it. Then over time, a bunch of the other things got weeded out and we got down to double aught buck. When I started as a cop, the duty loads were 2 3/4 or 3-inch magnums loaded with 12 pellets that were about 32, 33 caliber. They were just stock lead. They had not been coated, plated, anything, no buffering material in them. You press the trigger, the hammer fell, hit the striker or the firing pin, which detonated the charge in the shot shell. And you got 12 pellets racing down a barrel, bouncing off each other, bouncing into everything. There was recoil involved, and those pellets may or may not go where you intended them to early on. And it was a combination of construction of the shell, construction of the barrel, constriction of the barrel, because we had all these different chokes. Not too long after I came in the business, Federal came out with their H132, then their LE132, which was the first reduced recoil load. It was 9 pellets, copper plated, buffered a little bit differently, new shot cup. It was way pre-flight control. But folks started noticing that those 9 pellets would end up with usually an 8 pellet pattern with a flyer. And that led us.
I had seen that back in the past.
That led us to the 8 pellets. So now the norm is 8 or 9 pellets, some sort of plating on the buckshot, the lead pellets, maybe some different buffering or stacking, and different companies do different things. But I like Federal's, the granular material they use inside their buffering. I also like the Hornaday loads. That's kind of got us to where we're at. Is we're at 8 pellets, plated or not, in that Federal Flight Control Reversa-Tight shot cup for good defensive loads. That's a very quickie version of the evolution over time.
Yeah, very, very, very cool, and that's I'm glad, Aaron, that you brought that up, because I wouldn't have thought to ask that question, because I do have some knowledge of shotgun shells and or at least double aught buck versus how it's sized and whatnot. So I'm glad you brought that up, Aaron. Well, Eric, for our audience, because we did this with Kyle DeFore a little while back, and man, he brought it. When it came to, we asked for some, we kind of premised this, we never want to talk about cheap. And I know you're not concerned about, you're not willing to recommend cheap stuff just because people are wanting to get into the bottom end. We say on the bottom end of expense, yet high quality, right? And so let's talk about bottom to medium cost, and then what you really like the best. And so we can start with those 2 categories. If somebody says, hey, I got to get into a shotgun, what do you recommend that's not gonna beat the bank up too bad? But then what is your actual preference? And enunciate that for us, if you would.
So let me hit what I wanted a shotgun before I talk about what shotgun, if that makes sense.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
That's great.
Better, actually, yes.
So for a home defense shotgun or a law enforcement duty shotgun, I want a gun that works every time I press the trigger or run the action. Okay. I don't want things breaking that require trips back to the factory. I don't want things falling off the gun. I also want a sighting system that I can see. I want a light on the gun. So I want a reliable shotgun that has a sighting system I can work with and allows me to put a light on the gun because I need the light for identification in low light situations. And that's a whole nother topic that we can rabbit hole, and I don't necessarily want to head down that route right now.
And we agree with you on that, by the way.
So then kind of let's look at what's out there. Prior to COVID and the riots that happened in 2020, it was not hard to find Remington and Mossberg shotguns out there. It was not hard to find the Beretta shotguns, the Benellis, the semi-auto, and pump guns from every manufacturer. After COVID and the riots that we had in 2020, it became a lot less easy to find all of those things. Remington was going through bankruptcy. Everybody was selling everything they possibly could, right? I have a background when it comes to shotguns, looking at it from an organizational perspective. So it wasn't just the one or two shotguns I had in my safe. In my case, it was 250 to 300 shotguns that my organization had and had issued out to every deputy. Older shotguns from Remington, say pre-2000, I absolutely love. Those things seem to be bomb-proof. They worked extremely well. They were, I don't want to use the fit and finish term, but they were well-finished shotguns that ran without issue. Mossberg, especially the 590 guns, have really come on. There was a time where Mossberg didn't get a lot of credit for their guns, but with the 590, I think they've really pushed a very solid shotgun out. I don't have as much experience with the Remington 1100 and 1187, but the ones that I have seen seem to run well. The Benelli shotguns, and especially the Beretta 1301, are very functional guns that are worth the money. Last year, I want to say it was last summer, I was in a local gun store that had a number of the Turkish shotguns, both pump and that are Turkish-made shotguns, both pump and semi-auto. The one I happened to grab came from SDS Imports, and it was labeled ART02. Was the model number on it. I bought one, took it home. I've run about 500 rounds through the gun. There's some things I like about it. There's some things I don't like about it. I didn't like that the optic rail for the rear sight flew off the gun at about round 73 because the screw wasn't terribly big, and I watched the screw depart in uncontrolled flight. I didn't like that it had a 14.5-inch length of pull on it. And I didn't like that the charging handle on it would take flesh off your hand. However, with some emery cloth to knock the edges off that charging handle, it became kind of serviceable. And if you could find a way to shorten that stock down to 13 inches, it would probably be viable. But it was a $300 semi-auto shotgun that has made it 500 rounds mechanically. And it has a molded in form where you could attach a pistol light to it. So while I don't necessarily, it wouldn't be my first choice for a gun if somebody came to me and said, Eric, I got $500 tops, period. There's a $300 gun. They could go out, buy a couple flats of birdshot, learn how to run the gun, be able to get some decent double-aught buck to go with the gun. They could take it out, pattern it, and ensure it works. And they could throw a spare pistol light on it and have something in the closet. Again, I'm not saying it's the best choice, but it would be a viable choice, especially if money's an issue.
So, Eric, if I could just stop you a split second, it could have been just on my end, and it was captured just fine on your recording. What was the model number again?
It was an SDS Imports ART02 12-gauge semi-auto pop shotgun. And that is an example. I'm not saying that's the be-all, end-all, because I've only shot a sample of one of those. But I kind of didn't think it would hold up, and it's actually held up pretty well with the three things I dislike about it.
Right. Good deal.
If you could find an older production Remington 870 or a Mossberg 590, those are both extremely serviceable pump shotguns that do just yeoman-like work. I would add a light to them. So
real quick, so either a pre-2000 Remington, and then, but a modern and basically production, off the rack 590 Mossberg?
590.
Is that what you're saying,
Yeah.
or is there a time period on those too?
I would avoid the 500 based on what we've seen with the guns not holding up going through Gunsite, but the 590s hold up through the 3 and 5 day shotgun classes just fine.
Well, and
Okay,
it's
but
interesting.
what I mean,
Go ahead, Aaron.
I'm just saying, so like if you went and got one off the rack today, if it was brand new, you're okay recommending that 590 Mossberg
yes.
versus needing to go pre 2000 Remington. Yes. Okay, good. Cool.
And I put a light on it, make sure I could see the sights, make sure the gun was reliable and ran. That would probably be my middle of the road. That would be my recommendation for most folks. If money's not necessarily an issue, if you're not looking, if cash isn't a concern to you, by all means, I would say a Beretta 1301 with a light on it. Now, if you want to put an optic on it, you can. I'm not talking about slings for a home defense gun, in that you're probably not going to have a situation where if you're defending your house, you're having to climb over fences. Where if you're defending your house, you're necessarily going to be going up and having to put your hands on people or do other things with that gun, right? You're under no obligation to make a physical arrest of somebody, right? Stay there, point guns at them until the cavalry arrives. Or if they run off, lock down the house and let the cops come in and deal with them. And that's going to be my take too, now that I'm retired, and that's not my job.
Yep. That's our attitude towards it as well. We were never law enforcement, but yeah, that's our attitude towards it.
Really the first thing to add to the shotgun is a light, because I need it. I can do handheld light techniques with a shotgun, and there were some that we found that worked great when we had pump Remingtons and we hadn't gotten Surefire shotgun lights yet. But they make it more complicated. I want a light on the gun that I can turn on and gives me enough light to keep the shotgun in a legit low ready position while still illuminating and being able to see hands, being able to see faces.
So, but to interject or highlight, though, that you would prefer someone get a decent sling if they can after they address the shotgun and the light and the loads, correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I wouldn't talk you out of it, but it wouldn't be the first thing or two I'd put on the gun.
Well, in that case, what kind of sling?
There's nothing wrong with an adjustable 2-point like most folks are using on their ARs. Kind of the happy setup that I'm working with on one of my Mossbergs, and it's going to push onto the Beretta I just picked up and I'm going to be setting up. The Wilderness makes a stretchy sling. Now, it's not a bungee sling like we think of, where there's a bungee cord inside the tubular webbing. This is an 1.25 inch sling made out of an elastic that Sam and her crew stitched down there, so that it doesn't do the full stretch. It just does a very limited stretch. So now I can sling it, muzzle down over a shoulder, apply downward pressure on the forearm. It's got just a little bit of give to do that, but I can still present the shotgun and get it into play if that's what I need. It's just enough give to do some work with it, but not so much that it's restrictive.
Nice. Yeah, see, we're learning all kinds of awesome information, Eric. So I mean, you see, Aaron said it earlier. We're selfish. See, we're just I'm writing all these notes down because, this starts to become some of my purchase notes. Well, cool. Well, so I don't. Excuse me. So your preferred shotgun, however, seems to be the 1301. Is that correct?
Yeah, like I said, I've got two. I'm really happy with it. I really enjoy working with it. Unlike some other semi-auto shotguns I've had, it works the full spectrum of like number 8 shot for training to double-aught buck and slug for practice or defensive use without me having to modify the gun. There was one semi-auto I had some years ago, back when I was a gun writer the first time, where I had to go in and change the gas collars on it to change ammo.
Wow.
So if I wanted to go from double-aught buck to shooting birdshot for training practice, I would have to take the shotgun apart, put a different gas collar in the system, reassemble the shotgun to do it. 1301, I have not encountered that issue with any of the birdshot I've had or buck, and I've run the gamut from questionable stuff that like I don't even know the name of the brand to Federal, Remington, Winchester.
Well, you know, one of the things I thought about as I was driving home, I thought, man, maybe, and I'll just say it on the air. Maybe I should have told Eric he could probably do some show and tell, because we, of course, have been putting this on YouTube. But so as far as your 1301 goes, your preferred setup, can you run that down? I mean, we're talking even stock. Yep. We're talking. Can you just kind of hit on that? So
from the back of the gun to the front of the gun, it's bred a 1301. My primary is a Generation 1. I just picked up a Generation 2. I haven't messed with that yet. Magpul stock. First modification made to it is, and I didn't even know this had a name, but Cody Stewart with Vancomp. Cody's kind of the CEO of Vancomp these days.
Yeah.
Great dude. The top of the stock is rounded off. So normally it comes with a fairly sharp end on the recoil pad. I've gone in and cut that and rounded everything off. So if I'm doing a mounting of the shotgun from what would be the high ready, where the butt stock's down around the belt line and the muzzle and my eyes are up in the same plane. So if you can envision it coming up like this, the top of the stock doesn't catch on the shirt, or it doesn't catch on my gear.
Sense.
And then I've gone in with like emery cloth, sandpaper, Dremel tools, and smoothed that off and rounded it off. I pulled all the spacers out so that stock is as short as I can get it. I have the Aridus Industries adapter. Adam at Aridus has done some great work with developing products and accessories for the shotguns, especially the 1301s. Going forward from there, I have an Aimpoint T1, one of their first smaller rifle sights on the gun. It still sits in the factory rail that came with it. I don't have the Aridus shell carrier on the side of the gun. What I've got right now is a piece of Velcro that's on the side of the gun, and then I'll take the Velcro backed nylon and elastic shell holders and put them onto that. Going forward from the receiver, let me back up. While I'm at the receiver being left-handed, I modified the fire control group following Beretta's directions that they put out on the internet towards a left-hand safety for me instead of a right-hand safety. I have the Magpul Zukov forearm that's been modified with Aridus parts to sit on there. Then I have two pieces of pick rail at the front end of the forearm that I can mount a light to, which in my case happens to be a Surefire light currently, with a, don't quote me on it, but I think it's a Malkoff aftermarket head that I have on there. I have a Nordic Comp magazine tube extension on there with a clamp that will take the sling as well as a pick rail section for a light, but I have the pick rail section back on the shotgun forearm. The sling that I use on that gun is a Blue Force Gear adjustable 2-point on it, but I'd be just as happy in strictly inside the house roll with no sling on the gun. Outside would be a different story, but inside the house, no sling on the gun's fine for me. That's how I have that 1301 set up. If I were to set up a Mossberg, and I did an article on this earlier in the year, so I got a Mossberg 590. It, like the Beretta, the barrel has gone to Vancomp Systems. They're doing their work, their barrel work, not only on the 870s, 1100s, and the Mossbergs. They're finishing up kind of the beta testing of doing that on the Beretta barrels as well. Now that's how I got one. Magpul stock, Magpul forend on it with a Surefire light and a Viking Tactics mount on that Magpul forend. I have the stretch sling that I mentioned from the Wilderness, and the same thing. I've got a set of Velcro glued onto the side of the receiver. I'll eventually upgrade it to the actual plate from Vancomp, and then take an elastic and nylon shell holder that attaches to that Velcro side on there.
I think that's one of the shotguns that I saw some pictures.
Yeah, you probably did. I did an article on that earlier this year.
Yeah,
the only change
that's probably where I saw it.
Yeah,
buddy.
the only thing I've changed to the gun from that article was I got a section of rail put onto the barrel by Vang, and I've got a Hollow Sun AEMS sight on it right now. So it's an electronic sight that sits on there.
Nice. Well, we don't have to necessarily include it on air or social media, but man, if you're willing, I'd like to see a picture of your 1301 at some point.
I will try to get those to you very quickly. If not, I'll get them up and get them to you.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah.
For socials, that'd be great. But if we can, well, I have one question. So 20 gauge is that an option that you would recommend for some people, or is it just the fact that you can have reduced recoil? 20 gauge is just stay with 20 gauge. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm getting more comfortable with 20 gauge because there's a couple manufacturers that are coming out with better 20 gauge defensive ammo. For a while, we weren't seeing a whole lot of options. I think it was Winchester just came out with a number 2 buck 20 gauge load. An issue with the 20 gauge, when you look at trade-offs and benefits, the 20 gauge is smaller and lighter, but until you could find good ammunition for it, there was still a recoil penalty. So maybe with the recoil penalty and the lesser quality of the ammunition, it wasn't as good of a trade-off as we thought it was.
Now, when you say a recoil penalty, what do you mean on which side?
There weren't as good reduced recoil loads as we were seeing for the 12 gauge guns. So then you had a lighter shotgun that was more subject to dealing with the recoil, and loads that weren't reduced recoil like we were seeing in the 12 gauge. So the concept of I'll put a 20 gauge in a smaller person's hands because it's lighter had a recoil penalty that the 12 gauge wouldn't have had. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that well enough?
Okay. Oh yeah. That makes perfect sense, and it's. Yeah, I'm glad I asked that question. I wrote it down a second ago because, that lots of people have their 20 gauge over and under, and I've often thought, hey, maybe I'll just get a 20 gauge. But of course, now, again, I barely know anything. Actually, I know more about shotguns now than I did an hour ago. So, which is awesome. And I've of course heard about reduced recoil loads, but to speak of them as primary self-defense loads, that's really cool. Because the last time I shot a shotgun, it's like, man, this isn't that fun kicking my butt here, But also, I'm used to shouldering an AR. You need to shoulder higher recoil rifles and weapons differently than you do an AR. At least that's been my experience.
So going back to the
what I mean by that is I finally moved my 308 to basically almost to my shoulder instead of trying to shoulder it like I do my AR, and I enjoy my 308 a lot better. I'm assuming that the same is with shotguns.
So I will work the toe of the shotgun stock in the pocket of the shoulder. I don't know if you pick it up on the camera, but right about where that divot is where I put the toe of the shotgun stock. Mm-hmm. And I bring the stock. Okay. I don't want to do the SWAT hands, but I bring the stock up to the head and to my eye as opposed to bringing my head down to the gun. So I'm pulling the stock in as strongly as I can. I bring the stock up to eye level. I don't drop my head to the stock. And that cuts down a fair amount on the felt recoil. There's two paths you can take. Rob and Matt Hott do a great job with that push-pull. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I have so many years of running pull-pull while I'm loading the forearm and pulling it back that it's really difficult for me to run a pump gun with Rob's system. There's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't work well for me with a pump shotgun. However, with my Beretta, their push-pull system where the way he describes it is you're trying to pull the gun apart in the center works extremely well for me with a Sonato. Wow. It also translates to running a hunting rifle, dangerous game hunting rifle well.
I have always been, I've thought about that method because I've watched a lot of of their videos, and I'm super intrigued by it. I haven't had a chance to even try it, but I debated on asking you about it because I didn't want to start really talking about technique per se. But I'm intrigued by that technique, and I'm also intrigued by with a pump gun. So you go in and out of those techniques, or let's talk about that.
So I'm gonna try to do Rob's material justice. And if I screw it up, this is not a mistake on Rob's part. This is a mistake on how I heard it. Rob does not teach that you push it out until the instant before you press the trigger and break the shot. So you're not rocking around trying to take the gun apart all the time. But as you're mounting the gun, acquiring the sights, you push forward with your support hand while pulling back and then break the shot. For me, unfortunately, I have so much time preloading the forearm back, so I run the gun under recoil, that I haven't been able to retrain my brain on the pump gun to run Rob's technique. I can run it on a semi-auto. One of the other things that Rob does that's real interesting is his short stocking the gun for close quarters work, where he basically rolls the gun 90 degrees inboard. So the sights are parallel with the ground this way, not straight up and down, and then puts the flat of the stock up on the top of the shoulder.
Yeah, I had seen him.
Yeah, he does great work with that.
Man, yeah. Well, to me, and this is me asking because of my ignorance, because I when I look at that technique, I'm concerned. Okay, because I run a carbine, even though there's not a lot of recoil. You know, those of us that have run a carbine for a long time, we do pull the carbine into the stock into our shoulder. And I had been curious as I went down the road of learning the shotgun is, can I go between the two techniques? And that's what I was going to ask you about in that, is because I know how I run a carbine. Is there some incongruity there or is it just training?
So I would say the newer you are to the system, the easier Rob's stuff will translate over. When he goes to that short stocking system, it's definitely a push-pull. You cannot run it with the pull that I grew up with. It works best with the push-pull. So for me, it's more of a technique with a semi-auto shotgun. Just because of my difficulty transitioning from years of doing things one way to another. Not that there's anything wrong with Rob's stuff. There's not.
So do you yourself, if you're running a semi, do you use Rob's technique? Yes. And then, so you switch back and forth. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
You got me thinking, buddy. Yeah, this is awesome. I knew this was going to be cool, Eric, but man, I'm jazzed about this discussion.
Couple weeks ago, we were able to do a really pretty cool event for the first time. So Daryl conceived what's been called the Thunderstick Summit, and it was the intro run. We're going to run it late next year in Las Vegas, but the intro run was at the Dallas Pistol Club the second weekend in September. It was Tom Givens. In order of who taught, it was Tom Givens, myself, Daryl Bulkey, Steve Fisher, and Rob Hott.
Holy crap,
yeah,
dude.
I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh. Again, I wasn't going to be prepared to do it, but when I saw that, Eric, I was like, man, what a freaking event.
So Tom...
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
You know what that sounds like to me? Just the most badass rock and roll show of the best bands. You know, you get a ticket to and get backstage passes.
Yeah, it would.
That sounds awesome.
It would probably be like the shotgun equivalent of Day on the Green from my era.
Nice.
So Tom led off in the morning. Tom did the whole first morning on kind of the history of the shotgun, ammunition development, weapon projectile development, gun development, that whole thing. I took over in the afternoon, took him out onto the range, and worked various ready positions, safety manipulations of the gun, and loading and unloading. Came back Saturday. Daryl did a lot of turns and lateral movement. Steve did move and shoot drills. Steve Fisher did move and shoot drills all Saturday afternoon. Came back. Rob Hott took over Sunday morning. Rob, Matt, and their buddy Bob from the West Virginia State Police had everybody working the short stocking and the push pull all Sunday morning. Came back after lunch on Sunday for some historical shotgun stuff, as well as a kind of a panel Q&A. So I brought out a Rhodesian contract Browning A5 that I have that was used in the terrorist bush war over in Rhodesia. Daryl brought out an Ithaca Model 37 that was used by a Los Angeles Police Department detective supervisor in a unit that very specifically targeted violent career criminals. And then we did a bunch of Q&A. Folks got to handle those guns, and then a lot of questions were thrown at it. And it was fascinating because I started my block on Friday afternoon with the comment of reasonable people can differ. And all of us have very similar experiences with the shotgun, but we all have different perspectives on certain things. So I will, like for home defense, I will set up a shotgun where the action's cocked, the weapon's on safe, but the chamber's empty. So that when you pick up the gun, you have to hit the action release or release the shell, then run the action to chamber around and take the safety off before you can engage with it. Some people will say, well, you'll just put the safety on after you chamber around. I've never seen any cop do it. So, but some of the guys were also, they have different circumstances than I do, and they were setting up the gun with a round in the chamber, action cocked, weapon on safe. Or some guys were setting it up, action unlocked, weapon off safe. So just as an example, different opinions from 5 different guys who are all, I mean, Tom, Steve, Rob, Daryl are true experts on the shotgun. I'm just a reasonably knowledgeable dude who somebody invited into the room, and I still don't figure that one out. But, we had different perspectives. So.
Well, first, I'd like to say I probably overreacted, but man, I am fascinated by the Bush Wars. Mm-hmm. And the Cella Scouts, and I've been reading in and out of a couple of books. That is some fascinating history that a lot of people have no clue about. So when I heard you mention that, I can't help but I'd like to see that.
Brief segue, and I won't dive too far down the rabbit hole. There's a lot of misperceptions about what Rhodesia was and wasn't as a country.
Yep.
That is not applicable to other countries in Southern Africa and things that were going on there. Rhodesia had a very high literacy rate. It wasn't perfect. Very few places are, but it was not what it was portrayed as. And the work that the Selous Scouts did was very fascinating from a counterinsurgency standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
From being a former infantry guy, what the Rhodesian light infantry and the fire force concept was for going out and fighting terrorists, both from helicopters and from low-level parachute operations, was hugely fascinating. Okay, rabbit hole's done. Back to shotguns.
So let me stop you there, because what I'm thinking here is between your knowledge of it and my reading of some of the history, I think we got another show coming up.
I might have to go do some digging again through my collection, but yeah, I've got a lot of books on Rhodesia.
Cool. Yeah, let's talk about that for certain, buddy. Cool. I mean, this show has turned out to be quite fascinating for certain. Well, oh man, I'm trying to think, excuse me, where we wanted to go the rest of the show. But Aaron, I think yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we've covered a lot of the meat of the shotgun, and yeah, I've had a blast sitting here listening to you, Eric. So, and you've piqued my interest in especially that 590 Mossberg. I'm going to do some research on that myself.
I was not a fan, but I picked one up last year before, and I am really happy with that 590 gun design. The tang mounted safety versus a safety down by the trigger guard really lends itself for ambidextrous shooters. Doesn't lend itself to a pistol grip stock well, but it lends itself for ambidextrous shooters. And I think there's a lot going for the Mossberg 590, especially as they're made today.
And that was my last shotgun. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier or not, but the last
Oh, really?
shotgun I
I
ran
remember
was
your
a
Mossberg.
590, and man, it ran great. So yeah.
Well,
but go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, you finish your point, boy, brother. So,
all I was going to say is
geez.
that I I am still all about getting one of those 1301s. I may end up getting both because I'm intrigued about making sure that I can run both well, and so that's kind of my thought process on that right now. Is I'm going to end up investing in both of them.
Did you guys still want to talk pistols real quick, or?
Oh yeah, so that's funny because I'm dreaming about a couple of pistols right now. Maybe I'll have time to say what I've been penciling. I've got this notebook and I've been researching, and I'm an accountant, like I said, and I'm just writing down all these figures and weighing the pros and cons of particular pistols that I want. But on that note, yeah, this is the fun part of we and I'll say, I think I've said this on a couple of shows. We started out and we still are, our bread and butter is focusing on training, great trainers, focusing on that instead of the gear and but we also love the gear too. So kind of like when we ask people at the end, especially our first interviews with guests, and I can't remember if we talked to you about music or not. Did we?
We did.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Eric had
I
some
just want to
awesome.
I just want to make sure we did. So then the substitute question is, let's just talk about favorite gear. So, and I saw a video of you the other day running a pistol, but okay. So let's just talk right now. Your ideal, okay, caveat, you see a handful of guitars. You can't see all my guitars in here. I can't tell you what my favorite guitar is, but I'll tell you what my favorite guitar is today or this week.
So
and all of us are like that with our pistols, but lay into what your favorite rig is right now, pistol-wise.
So if anybody's tracking the bands, I'm going to go on a segue for a second. If you haven't listened to Sabaton, add Sabaton to your playlist. They're a metal band from
Sabaton.
They're a metal band from Eastern Europe that does historical metal rock, and they.
Man, I need some new music, so I'm looking that up.
One that's pretty cool is Winged Hussars. I can't remember the name of it, but it's about the Polish Winged Hussars riding into the Battle of Vienna to save Western civilization.
Awesome.
And they
so their lyrics are these historical issues, kind of like Spinal Tap, doing Stonehenge lyrics and stuff, right?
So that would be the one addition I'd make musically. Pistol wise,
awesome.
I was fortunate to get hired with an agency that allowed me to carry a 1911, and I carried it from about my second day on the job for the first 20 plus years of my career, custom 1911s. I got into the M&Ps probably around 2010, 2012. For a defensive gun, on duty, off duty, I really like the M&P system, mostly because it has a thumb safety like the 1911 does. Smith & Wesson, I've got little teeny tiny hands. I mean, midget size. The Smith & Wesson pistols fit my hand as well as a single stack 1911 fits my hand. There's nothing else out there on a full size or mid size gun that fits my hand as well as the M&Ps do.
Like the 2.0,
both
I guess?
1.0 and 2.0 fit my hands exceedingly well. So that's probably my favorite gun. It's not an emotional gun. It's just one that fits my hand and it works. I've got one of the staccatos. I haven't spent as much time with it. I've got some other guns that I'm interested in, but in terms of something that fits my hand, has an optic on it, runs well, is accurate enough for me to not embarrass myself with when I'm teaching or practicing, that's it. The thing, the pistol you saw me use in the video recently is an M&P 2.0 with an aim point acro on it. The barrel and the fire control group inside come from Apex Tactical. If it's got a light on it, it's a Surefire X300. On the full and mid-size guns, the smaller guns have a Streamlight TLR, I think 7 that I'm messing with for an article. And that's pretty much it right now. It's just a gun that works for me.
Awesome. Well, I on that video, I was like, is he running a Steiner or an Acro? I'm not super familiar with the way they look. So in a quick video,
that was a Steiner MPS
so
you saw on it. That was a T&E. And I have since gotten another Acro back, and an Acro's back on that gun.
Got it. But because they both use the same cross bolt mounting system,
yeah, it's about a 96-97% match. I've had folks tell me that they had a mount or a plate or a gun that was cut for an Acro that they couldn't get a Steiner on, but I've not had that problem, and most folks haven't had the problem.
Interesting.
Well, Eric, out of curiosity, I could probably look back at some photos. What pistol did you run when you and I were in the Rangemaster instructor class together?
That would have been a Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 full size with an aim-point Acro on it.
I thought I was gonna say I believe that, but I didn't want to sound ignorant. I thought that's what.
And that had the Apex Tactical Fire Control Group in it. And then the Monday after the class, before I flew back home, I went by Apex, and Randy Lee fit the Apex Gunsmith fit barrels for both my full size and my compact in the pistol that day.
Cool. So Apex is in near but it's in Arizona.
Yeah,
I'm forgetting the
they're
range.
In the Northwest Phoenix Megaplex. I can't keep track of all the cities down there, man. But it's the northwest part of the Phoenix Megaplex.
And you drove to the class?
No,
buddy?
I flew down. I flew down. I had a rental car.
Gotcha.
And okay. I had I've known Randy for years from a company I worked with previously. Was my introduction to him, and I had made arrangements to have him fit the barrels for me, and he was extremely gracious to do that.
Well, Eric,
yeah,
I would
know.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Lots
of overstepping.
Yeah, unfortunately, internet lags cause us to talk over each other. By the way, audience, if you get annoyed by us talking over each other, that's one of the issues. But I had no idea that Apex had that they offered barrels too. That's cool, and they cut their teeth on the M&P platform anyway. So that kind of makes sense.
Randy was a revolver gunsmith who, once the M&P what became the 1.0 pistols were out, Randy noticed some issues with them, and I'm not going to argue against anybody who points them out because they were there. One of the things was the accuracy issue in the 1.09 millimeters pistols. Randy did a lot of work with them. The deputies at LA County Sheriff's Office, especially their Special Enforcement Bureau, had a hand in the alpha and beta testing of those barrels, and then they pushed them out.
Cool.
Well, and I'll say about the M&P, I've got a really good friend. Hey, John, shout out. He's got a 2.0 compact. Forgive me, I don't remember the exact model numbers, but he's got an M&P 2.0. Man, and I'm gonna lash out on Glock. I'm a Glock guy. I think I have. It's funny. I literally don't know how many. I'd have to go look in the safe, but I think I've got about 10 Glocks. I'm a Glock guy. But everybody knows if you're serious about shooting, those things are not ready out of the box, especially the damn grip. But I grabbed my buddy John's M&P. That grip is money right out of the box. I don't know if you do any stippling work on yours, but man, that texture on the M&P 2.0 is awesome.
My full size hasn't been stippled, but all of my compacts have been, and my 1.0s were stippled as well. So
yeah, they need to be for sure.
And just the one thing I'll say, and this is not Glock bashing, but Glock's on Gen 5. I lived through the Gen 3 40 cal issues with an organization that had well over 200 of those guns in service, and we experienced our own Gen 4 40 cal issues Again, that impacted, pushing 250 guns that led my organization that I never thought would be in a 9mm to transition to a 9mm Glock in 2014 because of issues with the two previous generations of Glock pistols. So no pistol's perfect, right? You never buy the first year of anything out there. So it's just something to be aware of that Glock has had issues too. Not saying they're bad, just they've had their fair share of issues.
Well, and it's now, just speaking of grip, the Gen 5 Glock is the best out of the box, but it still is not ready. But I just wanted to give that
I was going to grab it, and
that accolade to the M&P. Eric and I have said it multiple times. It's almost like you happen to be born in the United States, the greatest country on earth, still, but I happen to be born into a Glock guy. But if I wasn't born into a Glock guy, I would probably pray that I was born as an M&P guy, because those are such awesome pistols.
Yeah, the way I say it, I simply say it this way: if I wasn't shooting Glocks, if for some reason I couldn't shoot Glocks, I would absolutely be M&P. There's no question.
I get it,
because I've ran them quite a bit with buddies, and there's no question. Or I would go XD. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I had to throw that in there.
Yeah. We just
pissed some people off. Sorry, audience members, if you like XD.
Well, all they need to do. Let's just be real. If you're an XD shooter, just read some articles by Greg Elefritz.
Yep. He put out a good one a couple of days ago. Yeah,
he lays out the pistols he says he sees problems with, the pistols he doesn't, and he says the XDs are the ones that he sees problems with.
Now, not to argue with Greg, right? Because I haven't read that article. I started a series of posts on both Pistol Forum and Light Fighter, titled "Guns and Optics I've Seen This Week," and it had to do with teaching a couple pistol classes down here at Gunsite right after I retired. And I had
I love that. I've seen those. Those are great posts, man.
Thank you. And the reason I started writing it was in 2 classes in 2 weeks, I had 5 XDs. And if you follow the conventional wisdom on the internet, all 5 of those guns should have self-destructed about the 3rd magazine. And all 5 of those guns made it through 1,000+ round count classes in a week down here. And it was what kind of caused me to start tracking every pistol I see in a class and how it performs.
Cool.
And so I post them, and I not that I'm necessarily going to run out and buy an XD, but if your budget, your financial situation allows you to get into an XD and that's what you can afford, I'm not convinced it's the worst decision you've ever made.
Yeah, and so I have to be clear when I joke, because it's easy to beat up on XD because that is somewhat popular. I've just had 2 buddies that have had catastrophic failures. So it's anecdotal. I understand that. So
I see,
but I've had.
I'm just saying I've had catastrophic failures with custom 1911s. I've had catastrophic failures with Glocks. I've seen catastrophic failures with an M&P. Right? Anything made by man can fail.
Eric, you just beat me to that point, and that's why I want to be real careful, because sometimes this can start a schism in discussions that kind of becomes sophomoric, and that's what we want to avoid. We definitely, it is the truth. You just hit it on the head. Anything made by man can fail, and I absolutely have had Glock failures. I've had every manufacturer that I've owned that are of quality, I've had failures with. So that's that's why we make sure we have backups, and that's why we minimize running a boat ton of rounds through what we are possibly defending our lives with. So that's the truth. So yeah, thank you for making sure that we're not going to get a bunch of hate mail.
No, they'll just send it to me.
Well, Eric, I'll tell you what, we're at a hour 30 on a great conversation, but I will say I finally told Eric, we were even talking about it before we got to get on with you. I finally made my decision that I'm going to go ahead and scrounge up some cash and get a Staccato C2, I believe is the model that I'm going to get. I'm in no hurry because shoot, I speak in terms, since I'm such a big Glock guy, I don't talk in dollars. I talk in Glock currency, and that's 5 Glocks, man. But you know, being so caught on one platform, I've been going back and forth on getting a Langdon Tactical LTT Beretta, and then some sort of 1911, and when you just shake it up, the Staccato, let's be real, is not a Ferrari, but it's a Porsche 911. Yeah. That's just the way I try and relate things when it comes to quality, but it's just what you get out of them. It seems for the dollar, you start shaking it out, it's actually not that expensive, especially when, man, I would love to get a Wilson Combat or a Nighthawk or something of that nature. But, the Staccato is even less expensive than those. But so what are your thoughts on the Staccato, just as we're talking
about it? I've got a Staccato P. Bought it as a retirement present back in 2019. Yeah, that was when I retired. I like the premise. The guns seem to be holding up well. I'm looking forward to Springfield Prodigy. Not that it's a Staccato, but I think that it's a good entry-level gun. Let me back up. The conversations that myself and some of my friends have been having relate to perceptions, and I would say flawed perceptions on people's parts. So I grew up carrying a 1911. I bought my first 1911 about 30 minutes after I got the job offer from the sheriff's office that hired me. I went from the office of the elected sheriff to the gun store, bought a Series 80, a stock Series 80 pistol. They took it next door to the gunsmith. Right, I think I bought the gun for between $500 and $550. It got carried next door to the gun store, and they did their basic combat auto package on it, which was a reliability feeding job, for between $300 and $350. So over half the cost of the gun, I sunk into gunsmith work before I ever picked the gun up. Because what you had to do was get a 1911 set up to where it would feed and that it would run reliably, not just with ball ammo, but with hollow point ammo, and that you could cycle the slide and eject a fully loaded round from the chamber to do dry practice, clear the gun out, and do other things. The guns didn't come that way. They had to be set up that way. So when you're looking now at Staccatos or at the Springfield Prodigies, and everybody's like, oh, wait, it won't feed. It has to go back to the factory. I get
the Prodigies.
Yeah, some of the people have been complaining about the Prodigies. I've seen folks complain about Staccatos as well. But a large segment of the consumer populace, I'm going to say they're spoiled based on my experiences, but they've gotten to the point with Glocks and CZs and VP9s and M&Ps and whatever else that they expect the gun to run perfectly out of the box. Now, that's what we should all expect. But some of us grew up in an era where you had to have a gunsmith do a few things to the gun to make sure it would function reliably. So it's a little bit less of a problem to me when I have to have a gunsmith take a look at it. And that's even after, for me, going to a Larry Victor's Build a 1911 class that I did back in 2010. And while I've learned how to do those things, I haven't spent that much time in the gun since. So when I pick up one of the Springfields, I'm probably going to have a gunsmith do a couple things inside the gun for me to make sure that it runs. And I guess for me, that's just cost of doing business.
So you're saying your plan, it's so funny, Eric, did we not have this very conversation
Yep.
about the Prodigy or other guns I've been looking at. I'm talking about before we got on, Eric. So you're saying that you're thinking about getting a Prodigy too?
I hopefully am on the list for one from Springfield because of my gun rider gig, right? And
yeah.
but I fully expect that I'm going to have, when I get my hands on it, it's going to have a couple things done to the barrel hood and the feed ramp. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I had to have them done to every 1911 I've owned. Had to.
Well, I don't know, Eric, if you happen to see that we had Rob Latham on this last week.
No, I missed that.
But we had Rob Latham and Mike Seeklander on the same show. It was the first time we had two guests on at one time. I'm not sure why we don't do more of multiple guests, but yeah, it was a really interesting show. And Rob, we talked about the Prodigy on there. So yes, it's been interesting how this conversation has went on multiple fronts.
Well, and that was my concern, and I laid it out to Eric, was that the reason why I was leaning towards because I was stoked when I saw the Prodigy released, because I've always thought if I'm going to get a 1911, I'm going to get a Springfield. I know it's going to need work. Then the Prodigy came out, and I wasn't thinking so much about the work, but then you start looking at it, it's like, okay, it's a 1911 style gun. Really, all they are, right? I'm simplifying it, but it is a 1911 with a widened grip that has a magazine that goes down to a single stack. In a nutshell, that's basically what it is, right? So it's a freaking 1911.
So
talking. But so I'm. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, talking to a couple friends of mine, one of whom is a legit competent gunsmith, and one of whom is just a user and abuser of guns, who had a little bit more time on the Springfield than I had. They both said the same thing: barrel hood, feed ramp. Their estimates are between $150 and $250 in costs, and that being the work. Now, I've heard one well-respected gunsmith who specializes in double stack guns who's like, oh, it's on the far side of $600 of work and all these parts. All right, I'm not going to argue with him, but the two other guys are like $150 to $200. So now you're maybe $1,500 into the gun. Mm-hmm. I think that's reasonable.
Half the cost of what you're getting into a staccato that's running decent. Right,
and it still gives you the. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I think the one that I'm looking at would be about $2,300. Now, the same thing with any company. You know, there's crazy expensive staccatos and STIs. I mean, there's staccato now, but at the same time, it's encouraging, man. This is a cool real time. Let's just say the word evolution, at least opening my mind back to the Prodigy. I want to keep in touch with you, Eric, about what you think about it when you get a hold of one. Because again, I was so excited about it, not just because I wanted to save money. It's just that I've again had the 1911s from Springfield on my radar for a long time. And for someone to obviously come out with a gun that is targeting the staccato market, let's just be frank, at a better price point. So, man, that's cool. I'm glad we got to talk to you about it. Man, we are at 1 hour and 40 minutes. So, Eric, luckily, it's 2 hours earlier for you than me, but it's 3 hours. Excuse me. Yes, it's 3 hours earlier for you than Eric. So I bet you he's got an early morning.
I do, but this is one of the things I love. So no big deal. Man, I'm so glad we got to hang out.
Yeah.
We were a little bit bummed at first. It was like, oh no, and sincerely, just saying this on the air, we're like, oh well, let's let Eric off the hook, and we'll reschedule. But rescheduling always postpones the conversation we wanted to have. And so I'm glad.
Well, and
that,
full
yeah.
disclosure, the reason why we almost didn't get on with Eric is because he's doing the freaking work teaching at Gunsite
Exactly.
today, and his class went over a little bit. But man, I was stoked to see a text saying, "Hey, I'm on now,
Yeah.
guys." So
Yeah,
really cool.
So for you, Eric, we were just Aaron and I. We sometimes we jump on here just to talk EvoSec business, and so we were just doing that. And when you text and said, "Hey, I'm here," and we're like, "All right, let's do it." So, man, awesome conversation, Eric. You've become a very valued friend, and I know that we've only really hung out one time at a class, but your wisdom always helps us. And yeah, I mean, just really awesome conversation. Learned a lot. I got all these notes, and again, Aaron and I re-listen to these shows because we get as much out of it, and it's actually even more fun listening a second time, even though we probably get tired of hearing ourselves. Yeah, it's been an awesome show, buddy. We really appreciate it.
Well, I'm honored that you guys asked me on the first go round, and I'm honored that you guys actually thought enough of that to bring me back a second time. I really, really like the shotgun. It's nice to see it coming back, and we're fortunate in that with the gun coming back, there's still a good group of folks around the industry that have some experience with it that can teach it. They have some understanding of how folks can be employing it well. So that's pretty cool. And I'm glad you guys thought of me to come in and talk about the shotgun when I've got some really talented peers out there.
Well, I tell you, this is a catalyst for us to really, number one, make the investment in getting our shotguns set up, and then we say this, and we end up doing this. We end up hosting people, and man, this just seems like a good reason to talk about hosting you for your shotgun class at one of our locations.
Absolutely,
so,
love to.
Yeah,
I think
awesome.
I think it would be easy to fill up, frankly, in this time for sure. So, well, cool. Well, Aaron, I'll
Eric,
let you close it out.
I was
buddy.
going to say, yeah, Eric, can you just real quick give our audience how they can get a hold of you, buddy?
Yep, super easy. So my company is Cougar Mountain Solutions. The website right now is cougarmountainsolutions.com/blog. That will get you into the front end. I'm on the Book of Faces, aka Facebook, at Cougar Mountain Solutions. I'm on Instagram at Cougar_Mountain_Solutions. The business is named after a terrain feature, a small mountain in my county. Not anything else. It's the small mountain in my county that the company's named after. So that's how you can get a hold of me. I also teach down at Gunsite. So either of those places is where I can be found.
Hey, Eric, can I interject something? A little bit of a funny story is my wife and I were at dinner earlier, and we were talking about bringing you on, and the name of your company came up, and my wife was hilarious. She goes, "What, are there a bunch of cougars around there or something?" And she and talking about the four-legged. So but I knew better. She's the one that brought it up.
When I named the company, that while I knew the Cougar thing, right, that was not even remotely part of it. It had to do with the terrain feature of the Cougar Mountain in the south end of my county. And then later on, people started pointing it out.
Well, and I sure hope that's not a jab at all, because I didn't even think about it at all. And that's what I responded to. I was like, no, it's a terrain feature where he lives.
Yeah. But it's kind of cool because that does stick in people's minds. And if that gets them to pay attention to my stuff, all the better.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, and I'm still looking for my right-handed version of the malfunction clearance. I can't pay attention to left-handers.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm in my right mind. I don't know about the rest of you people.
I'm just kidding. I'm left-handed, but I shoot right-handed. I box right-handed.
Oh, on that, just
yeah.
Eric's left-handed, but he does everything correctly with the right hand.
just the other place, I am the editor at AmericanCop.com, which is an online magazine in the Firearms Media Group.
That's right.
So what the articles they're talking about can be found at AmericanCop.com.
And I will place all of this on the in the show notes too, Eric.
Cool.
So
Thank you.
They can click on it though. You guys have a good one.
Good evening, guys.
Hey, thank you very much.
Good evening, guys, and
Thank you,
it's
Eric.
been a blast, and we will repeat offend with you, brother. So thanks again, and hey, you guys have a good night.